Sequences. Use geometric sequence formulas. Okay, we have the following formula. We have a of n is equal to a negative 1/16 times 2 to the n minus 1. We want to recognize what is the fourth term. So here, notice you only have really one formula, because later on you're going to see some other problems on here that's actually going to have, looks like, two parts to the formula. So this is only a one-part formula here. So we can go a of 4. So we go a of 4 is equal to a negative 1/16 times 2, and then the n is going to become a 4 minus 1 as the exponent. So we're going to say negative 16 times 4 minus 1 is going to become 3. So now we want to clean this up. We want to work with the exponent first. So we're going to take 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So what we have now is a negative 1/16 times 8. Since this is a fraction, we can make this into a fraction. We can go ahead now and multiply this out. So we could take the negative 1 times 8, which would be negative 8/16. So I just multiply the top, multiply the bottom. Now since they're both even, we can divide by 2. So it's just a negative 4/8. Divide by 2 again. It's a negative 2/4. Divide by 2 again, and it's a negative 1/2. So our fourth term would actually be a negative 1/2. Because what we did was, wherever there was an n, we replaced it with a 4, subtracted by 1, make it a 3. The 3 2's become an 8. Keep this as a fraction, make this as a fraction over 1. Multiply your top numbers to get negative 8, the bottom numbers to get 16. I just keep dividing by 2 and eventually multiply, or actually reduce it down to a negative 1/2. So I'm going to say negative 1/2. Okay, now this is what I was talking about earlier. Here you have actually two parts to this. This is negative 11. This would actually be your first term. And how do I know this is the first term? Because there's a 1 there. Then we want to find our second term. Then we want to find our third term. And then we want to find the fourth term. Well, this one is pretty easy in that you're going to actually multiply by this part right after the parentheses. So don't let the parentheses mess you up. Let's look at this as your starting number, and then what you're doing is you're timesing by 10 each time. So we're going to take a negative 11 times 10. So that would be a negative 11 with a 0, so that would be a negative 110. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to times this negative 110 by 10. So I'm going to multiply that by 10. So that's going to be a negative 11 followed by 2 zeros. Okay, now I want to go ahead and times this by 10. So I'm going to take the negative 1100 and times this by 10. So when I do that, I get a negative 11 followed by 3 zeros. So my answer would be this, a negative 11 followed by the 3 zeros right there. So a negative 11,000. So let's type that in. So negative 11,000. Okay, next one. Now we only have one level here. This is back to the single type of equation. So when we come over here, what we want to do is we want to replace the letter n with a 3. So we want to say a of 3 is equal to 3/2 times a negative 2. but the n is going to become 3. So let's clean this up a little bit. So we got 3 over 2 times this negative 2. 3 minus 1 becomes 2. Let's continue down. Let's keep working with this exponent. So we have 3 of 2 in the front. A negative 2 times a negative 2 is going to be a positive 4. Now since we have a fraction here, we want to make this into a fraction. Simply put that over 1. Now what we could do here is that we could go ahead and cross multiply, divide the 2 and the 4. But let's say you don't see that. So you're going to get 12 over 2. And from 12 over 2, you're going to get this to be 6. So a of 3 is equal to 6. So our third number in our sequence is 6. But you can see the difference. This is like having one single formula. So if they give you a single formula here, what you want to do is wherever there's an n, you want to replace it with what you're looking for. So that's therefore it became a 3 here. It became a 3 here. From here we said 3 minus 1 is 2. Then we continued working with the exponents. So negative 2 is 4. Now we have 3 over 2 times 4, which you change into a fraction since this is a fraction. Again, you could cross cancel here, divide 2 into 4, but if you don't see it, it's okay. 3 times 4 is 12, 2 times 1 is 2. Take 12 divided by 2 is 6. So a of 3, that is the third number of the sequence, is 6. Okay, here again, looks like we have two parts of the formula here. We want to find the third term in the sequence. So this is the first number that we're dealing with, and we want to work it to the third term in the sequence here. So we're going to have an 8 here. That's our first. Then we're going to have our second, and then we're going to have our third, because we only have to go to 3. Remember, we need to start with this number here, and we're only really concerned with what comes after. So what comes after this, which is a times and by negative 5. So when a times by negative 5. So you want to take this 8 times a negative 5. When you do that, you get a negative 40. So our second term is a negative 40. Now we want to go ahead and find the third term here. So again, we want to multiply by a negative 5. So I'm going to take a negative 40 times a negative 5. So negative 4 times 5 is a positive 20, but a 0's after it. So this becomes a positive 200. So our third term here should be a positive 200.